Welcome to my channel. My name is Carl. I'm a Bob Ross certified painting instructor. Today we are going to paint this cabin forest scene, and we're going to do things a little bit differently, so stick around. Up here I have a 16 by 20 canvas. I've prepped it with a little black gesso. I used some paper towels for the trees and then a foam applicator down here. I allowed that to dry. I will do more videos on black gesso in the future. And then in the sky portion, I've actually covered it in a very thin coat of Prussian blue. And then down here in the gesso area, I covered it in a mixture of phthalo green and alizarin crimson. And the paint on top is wet paint, very thin layer. I'm not using liquid white or liquid clear, so we're actually going to go right over the top of those paint colors that I added. And again, thank you so much for watching my videos. Please like if you enjoy the content, and let's get started. All right, we're going to go into a very little bit of white. Very little bit. Now we do have, it's not like what we normally have, but I do have color on there. There, and we're just going to start mixing. And I'm using a 1-inch brush, so just X strokes. Very soft. And you know what? I actually don't mind. I want the trees in the background. I want it to be very, very soft. So, and this is kind of the greenish mixture. There, I want it to be kind of misty. Just X strokes. Maybe over there we'll add a little bit more, just a little bit. All right, I'm going to take a 2-inch brush, clean and dry, just to soften. There. But look at all the things happening. Whisper, whisper. And I know this is a little different. Bob's done this a few times on some of his shows where he underpainted with just color. Whisper, like a soft, super soft. And I want to take a little bit of that Prussian blue, a little bit of black, a little bit of white. And I'm going to take that 1-inch brush, and I don't want a lot of paint. We're going to tap. Just some indications. Just tapping, maybe where some trees will be. I want this to be pretty subtle back here. And I think we'll do, this is kind of based off, similar to what one of Bob's pictures. There. There. And I'm going to take a liner brush. You can thin it with paint thinner. I'm going to use walnut oil. Thin it down. We're just going to put some indications back here of little tree trunks, things happening. We won't have a lot of detail. There. Just thin paint. But look at that. Look at all that. I'm just kind of using long strokes. And we'll cover with some highlights. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of that titanium white. We'll kind of mix it up into this mixture. And a little bit of maybe some Indian yellow. And I'm going to use that same brush. There. Think about different layers. Again, I want these to be pretty subtle. Just enjoying themselves. way in the distance. And if your paint's not sticking, you can add a little bit of thinner or walnut oil. Oh, it's beautiful. Or think of all the different layers, maybe in this corner. You know what, maybe we'll change the flavor just a little bit of yellow ochre. Just right in here, just by varying the flavor a touch. So Prussian blue, we'll kind of create a pile, a little black. And then let's add a little bit of white, just so it's, and then maybe a little phthalo green. And who knows, maybe right in front. We'll create some layers. I'm going to bring in a little bit of sap green in that. There we go. Just some distant trees, but look at the layers we're creating. This layer being a little bit darker. And we'll just kind of scrub in. Remember, we do have some color on the canvas. And one little trick, let's just take a little bit of this light color on a filbert brush. So just to show you, we can kind of get an idea. So maybe this will be a shoreline. There. But this kind of helps shape maybe back here. So especially if you're just starting painting, you know, the fact that we have the wet on wet, we can move and slide paint. I'm putting a very subtle amount, but maybe this shapes kind of where things live. I think we'll have a cabin in here, and we'll put in some grass, but don't be afraid to do something like this. I know on Bob's show, you know, he's painting very quickly, but I would encourage you to use some of these techniques and strategies just to kind of help your painting along. There. So now we have a little indication of where some things live, and then we can start moving forward. And I'm going to take a fan brush, and let's put in a few indications of some evergreen trees, just for some variation. So maybe right there. So a lot of paint, corner of the brush. There. And then this kind of blends into these bushes here. Let's give him a friend. Right there. Corner of the brush. There we go. Remember, phthalo green is very dark. And then let's bring in maybe some cad yellow. Notice I mixed up next to it. And then let's bring in a little yellow ochre. And let's highlight some of these trees or the bushes in the kind of middle ground here. There. And, you know, just the lay and structure of the bushes. We'll change the flavor a little bit more of the ochre. Look at that. And just those subtle variations. Just beautiful bushes. A little bit of cad yellow. We'll put in some little indications of some grasses. And I'm going to tell you what, let's have some fun and switch to a 2-inch brush. I feel like the 2-inch brush gives a little bit more softness. Yeah, we're gonna add a cabin here, but let's do this. Look at the, oh, beautiful. Don't want to leave out this side. Again, like I said, we'll have some water down here, but I like how this kind of recesses back here. Right to the water's edge. And you know what we'll do? Let's do this. Let's take some of this color and let's start pulling it straight down. Straight down. We'll create that illusion of water right here. And then very softly go across. And I'm going to add a little bit of black. That'll dull it down a bit. There. And then as we get lower, there we go. I feel like our cabin, maybe right there. The nice thing about scratching out the color, we're not committed yet. And we're just going to start kind of laying in the shape. This would be a great spot for a cabin, wouldn't it? Dark sienna, a little bit of white, a little roll of paint, and let's just start putting in a little indication of where the boards are. Light pressure, and you could use a filbert brush if you wanted. There. Just pull straight down, light pressure. Let's take that same color and let's add a little bit of the blue, a little bit of black, maybe in shadow here. And then for the roof, let's mix up a little bit of titanium white, a little bit of black, and we'll just put the indication of some things happening. There. I like that. Kind of stagger as you go down. Beautiful. Just some shingles. Here's what we'll do is let's just scrape out a little bit. And I see a little path here. So let's take some of this brown mixture. And then maybe right in here, maybe this path comes here. And then it comes back to the water's edge. Maybe a little bit more white. There we go. And I'm going to go back into a little bit of some of the green colors with my 1-inch brush. Maybe we'll add a few more bushes. There, yep, there's some bushes right there. Yeah, and then we'll take this 2-inch brush. We'll go into a little bit more subtle color, and maybe we'll fill in some of this grass. There. And by working in layers, watch this. See this area right here? I can just put a little bit more of a distinct layer. There. And who knows, maybe we have a few more fresh reflections there. Pull across. Let's take some of that brown mixture and let's get a little roll of paint. Maybe we have some shore. And I'm going to really scrub. I want it to be a little softer. There. Maybe some dirt, mud. All right, I'm going to take some of that brown mixture. Let's take a little bit of white, and we'll put a few little highlights on some of this dirt. Not much. Just let the canvas take what it wants. There we go. And then I'm going to take mostly straight white and a little roll of paint. We'll put some water lines out here. Oh, very nice. Look at that. And make sure your water lines are straight across. Let's change the flavor a little bit more. Maybe a hint of some red, just to dull it down. And let's put in a few. There, look at that. And then the fan brush comes in handy. I'm going to go into some of that same color. And watch this. We can go in here, be a little duller. But you have a little bit more control. And watch this. We can start putting in, maybe here and there, just some grasses. And this way, we can start separating some of the layers. Look at that. Just some, like this comes right out in front. I like that. So maybe a little bit more cad yellow. Maybe we can put a few. And I'm just pushing up. Right by the cabin. Just some subtleties. And I'm going to soften it just a touch because I don't want it to be quite as bright. I feel like we're going to put just, maybe there's some bushes that are just showing here. We'll take some black, maybe a little bit of that bluish mixture, a little bit of sap green. And just right in the corner, we'll put in some. So I just used the brush rounded side up and then I pressed up. I'm going to take this 1-inch brush, cad yellow. Remember, if it's not going to stick, add a little bit of thinner or walnut oil, liquid white. Let's put in a few bushes, and I'm going a little brighter here. Now you shouldn't have to push too hard. And let's go into a little bit of some of those brown colors. There we go. Make sure your paint is thin enough as you're doing this. And the only last thing I see that I want to add to this would be take a little bit of white, a little roll of paint, just right in here. Just dance right to the shoreline. There. Oh, I like that. And maybe subtle. There. And I think we're ready to sign it. Thanks for watching today, and I hope you enjoyed this picture. Check out my website at carlvonartistry.com. If you're looking for art supplies or Bob Ross products, you can check out my affiliate links in the description below. Happy painting. See you next time.